Hello, this is Papa B reading, and I'm continuing with The Magician's Nephew, found in the book, which is found within The Complete Chronicles of Narnia by Harper Row, and this book has been written by C.S. Lewis a long time ago. I'm at chapter 3, as I said, which is called The Wood Between the Worlds. You remember the scene. Diggory, from chapter 2, Diggory had put on a yellow ring on his finger, and all of a sudden he disappeared. Uncle Andrew in his study vanished instantly. Then for a moment everything became muddled. The next thing Diggory knew was that there was a soft green light coming down on him from above and darkness below. He didn't seem to be standing on anything or sitting or lying. Nothing appeared to be touching him. "I believe I'm in water," said Diggory, "or underwater." This frightened him for a second, but almost at once he could feel that he was rushing upward. Then his head suddenly came out into the air, and he found himself scrambling ashore, out onto smooth, grassy ground at the edge of a pool. Excuse me. As he rose to his feet, he noticed that he was neither dripping nor panting for breath, as anyone would expect after being underwater. His clothes were perfectly dry. He was standing by the edge of a small pool, not more than 10 feet from side to side, in a wood. The trees grew closer together and were so leafy that he could get no glimpse of the sky. All the light was green light that came through the leaves, but there must have been a very strong sun overhead, for this green daylight was bright and warm. It was the quietest wood you could possibly imagine. There were no birds, no insects, no animals, and no wind. You could almost feel the trees growing. The pool he had just got out of was not the only pool. There were dozens of others. A pool every few yards, as far as his eyes could reach. You could almost feel the trees drinking the water up with their roots. This wood was very much alive, and he tried to describe it afterwards. Diggory always said it was a rich place, as rich as plum cake. And the strangest thing was that almost before he had looked about him, Diggory had half forgotten how he had come there. At any rate, he was certainly not thinking about Polly or Uncle Andrew or even his mother. He was not even the least frightened or excited or curious. If anyone had asked him, "Where did you come from?" he probably would have said, "I've always been here." That was what it felt like, as if one had always been in that place and never had been bored about nothing that had ever happened. He said afterwards, long afterward, it's not the sort of place where things happen. The trees go on growing, that's all. After Diggory had looked at the wood for a long time, he noticed that there was a girl lying on her back at the foot of a tree a few yards away. Her eyes were nearly shut, but not quite, as if she were just between sleeping and waking. So he looked at her for a long time and said nothing. And at last she opened her eyes and looked at him for a long time, and she also said nothing. Then she spoke in a dreamy, contented sort of voice. "I think I've seen you before," she said. "I rather think so too," said Diggory. "Have you been here long?" "Oh, always," said the girl. "At least I don't know. A very long time." "So have I," said Diggory. "No, you haven't," said she. "I've just seen you come up out of that pool." "Yes, I suppose I did," said Diggory with a puzzled air. "I'd forgotten." Then, for quite a long time, neither said any more. "Look here," said the girl presently. "I wonder, did we ever really meet before? I had a sort of idea, a sort of picture in my head of a boy and a girl like us. living somewhere quite different and doing all sorts of things. Perhaps it was only a dream. I've had that very same dream, I think, said Diggory, about a boy and a girl living next door and something about crawling among rafters. I remember the girl had a dirty face. Aren't you getting it mixed? In my dream, it was the boy who had the dirty face. I can't remember the boy's face, said Diggory, and then added, Hello, what's that? Why, it's a guinea pig, said the girl, and it was, a fat guinea pig nosing about in the grass. But round the middle of the guinea pig there ran a tape, and tied on to it by the tape there was a bright green ring. Look, said Diggory, the ring, and look, you've got one on your finger, and so have I. The girl now sat up, really interested at last. They stared very hard at each other, trying to remember. And then, at exactly the same moment, she shouted out, Mr. Ketterly. And he shouted out, Uncle Andrew, and they knew who they were and began to remember the whole story. After a few minutes of hard talking, they had got it straight. Diggory explained how beastly Uncle Andrew had been. What do we do now, said Polly. Take the guinea pig and go home? There's no hurry, said Diggory with a huge yawn. I think there is, said Polly. This place is too quiet. It's so dreamy. You're almost asleep. If we once give in to it, we shall just lie down and drowse forever and ever. It's very nice here, said Diggory. Yes, it is, said Polly, but we've got to get back. She looked up and began to go cautiously toward the guinea pig, but then she changed her mind. We might as well leave the guinea pig, she said. It's perfectly happy here, and your Uncle Andrew will only do something horrid to it if we take it home. I'll bet he would, said Diggory. Look at the way he's treated us. By the way, how do we get home? Go back into the pool, I expect. They came and stood together at the edge, looking down into the smooth pool. It was full of the reflection of green, leafy branches. They made it look very deep. We haven't any bathing suits, said Polly. We shan't need them, silly, said Diggory. We're going in with our clothes on. Don't you remember? It didn't wet us on the way up. Can you swim? A bit, can you? Well, not much. I don't think we shall need to swim, said Diggory. We want to go down, don't we? Neither of them much liked the idea of jumping into that pool, but neither said so to the other. They took hands and said, 1, 2, 3, go, and jumped. There was a great splash, of course. They closed their eyes, but when they opened it again, they found they were still standing hand in hand in that green wood and hardly up to their ankles in water. The pool was apparently only a few inches deep. They splashed back into the dry ground. What on earth's going wrong? Said Polly in a frightened voice, but not quite so frightened as you might expect, because it is hard to feel really frightened in that wood. The place is too peaceful. Oh, I know, said Diggory. Of course it won't work. We're still wearing our yellow rings. They're for the outward journey, you know. The green ones take you home. We must change rings. Have you got pockets? Good. Put your yellow ring in your left. I've got 2 greens. Here's one for you. They put on their green rings and came back to the pool. But before they tried to another jump, Diggory gave a long, oh. What's the matter, said Polly. I've just had a really wonderful idea, said Diggory. What are all the other pools? How do you mean? Why, if we can get back to our own world by jumping into this pool, mightn't we get somewhere else by jumping into one of the others? Supposing there was a world at the bottom of every pool. But I thought we were already in your Uncle Andrew's other world or other place or whatever he called it. Didn't you say? Oh, bother, Uncle Andrew interrupted Diggory. I don't believe he knows anything about it. He never had the pluck to come here himself. He only talked of one other world. But suppose there were dozens. You mean this wood might be only one of them? No, I don't believe this wood is a world at all. I think it's a sort of place of an in-between place. Polly looked puzzled. Don't you see, said Diggory. No. Do listen. Think of our tunnel under the slates at home. It isn't a room in any of the houses. In a way, it isn't really part of any of the houses. But once you're in the tunnel, you can go along it and come out into any of the houses in the row. Mightn't this wood be the same? A place that isn't in any of the worlds, but once you've found that place, you can get into them all. Well, even if you can, began Polly, but Diggory went on as if he hadn't heard her. And of course that explains everything, he said. That's why it is so quiet and sleepy here. Nothing ever happens here, like at home. It's in the houses that people talk and do things and have meals. Nothing goes on in the in-between places, between the walls and above the ceilings and under the floor or in our own tunnel. But when you come out of our tunnel, you may find yourself in any house. I think we can get out of this place into jolly well anywhere. We don't need to jump back into the same pool we came up by, or not just yet. The wood between the worlds, said Polly dreamily. It sounds rather nice. Come on, said Diggory. Which pool shall we try? Look here, said Polly. I'm not going to try any new pool till we've made sure that we can get back to the old one. We're not even sure if it'll work yet. Yes, said Diggory, and get caught by Uncle Andrew and have our rings taken away before we have any fun? No thanks. Couldn't we just go part of the way down into our own pool, said Polly, just to see if it works? Then if it does, we'll change rings and come up again before we're really back in Mr. Ketterly's study. Can we go part of the way down? Well, it took time coming up. I suppose it'll take a little time going back. Diggory made rather a fuss about agreeing to this, but he had to in the end because Polly absolutely refused to do any exploring in any new worlds until she had made sure about getting back to the old one. She was quite as brave as he was about some dangers, wasps for instance, but she was not so interested in finding out things nobody had ever done before, for Diggory was the sort of person who wants to know everything. And when he grew up, he became a famous Professor Kirk who comes into other books. And that is the end of part 1 of chapter 3 called The World, or rather The Wood Between the Worlds. This is Poppy B reading. Come back and let me read to you again. Bye-bye.